You are now listening to a podcast made in collaboration with the Copenhagen College Radio.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 82 of the Social Media and Politics podcast, bringing you expert insights into how social media is changing the political game. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, political scientist at the University of Copenhagen. Connect with the show on Twitter by following us at SMNP Podcast or check us out on the web, socialmediaandpolitics.org. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be looking at what's going on in the digital campaigning space in Italy, which I think is a really nice addition to the series because we've had some American campaigners on the show. We've had some communicators at the pan-European level and a local politician from the Netherlands. But it's been difficult for me to find and get a hold of digital strategists that are working on the national level within different European countries. So my guest today is Dino Amenduni. He is a political strategist and partner at the firm Proforma, which has done a lot of political campaigning work with the Partito Democratico, or the Democratic Party of Italy, which is the major center-left party. It is currently the second largest party in Italy. And you've probably heard of Matteo Renzi, the former prime minister of Italy. Partito Democratico, or PD, is his party. And Dino and Proforma have run a number of campaigns for PD. So they ran the 2014 European Parliament elections, where PD got 40% of the vote, which was a massive victory for them. They've also worked on the 2018 Italian national elections, the primary elections for Matteo Renzi in 2013 and 2017, and then a number of local elections for Rome, Bologna. And at the time me and Dino sat down, he was running a mayoral election campaign for Antonio De Caro in the town of Bari. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and the difference between local, national, and supranational campaigning at the European level. And what I think is super interesting about this interview is whenever we're looking at campaigning, we've heard about this tons of times on the show, you can't divorce the messaging and the campaigning itself from the context it's situated in. And I think what really came through for me in this interview was the importance of the Italian mainstream media and basically their lack of a watchdog function, which has been documented quite a bit in the academic literature, really seems to matter in terms of the role of social and digital in Italian campaigning. We also talk about the low degree of trust in Italian politicians and how people seem to just want that opposition candidate rather than so much listen to the policies or platform of a given party. So as Dino will kind of explain, that seems to be the pattern that's been unfolding in the past couple Italian election cycles, where in 2013 you had a national election where the center-left took power from the center-right, and then you had Matteo Renzi come in as a new leader. People were sort of galvanized behind him, which led to a great success in the 2014 European Parliament elections. Fast forward 4 years to the 2018 Italian elections, and the Five Star Movement and Lega Nord were able to form a coalition government. So there's sort of this swinging back and forth. And in Dino's perspective, it's a lot about people just wanting change. And I think this is really interesting to follow because if that hypothesis holds, then people will eventually want to take out the Lega Nord and the Five Star Movement who are currently in power. So it'll be curious, everyone who's interested in the sort of nationalist right, when they're in power, are they immune from that same dynamic where people just want change? And then will they change back to the mainstream or to something else is the question. But that is outside the scope of this interview, just to give you a bit of context. My guest, again, is Dino Amenduni. He is a political strategist at Proforma. And kind of funny backstory, we met at a workshop in Sicily where Google projected the chance of rain to be 50%. So we decided to take the interview outside to avoid the noise from the conference hotel. But you will be able to hear in the audio a bit of an impending storm, and it started to rain. But that aside, I can report that the cannolis are delicious. So with that, let me turn it over to Dino. Dino, thanks for taking the time out and welcome to the Social Media and Politics podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
So why don't we start out and talk a little bit about Proforma, the agency you're working for. Can you tell us a little bit about what it does and sort of who it's working for?
We are a traditional advertising agency. We work with political campaigns. We are known in Italy mostly for this, but we work also for the institutional level, for public administrations, but also for the on commercial level, institutional. We have TAP, the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, as our client. In our portfolio, for example, we work with advertising for TV or for web as well. But we are known for the electoral campaigns mostly in Italy and also on the European international level.
Interesting. I want to ask you a little bit about maybe differences between commercial and political in a second, but let's hone in on your work at Proforma. So what's your kind of particular day-to-day tasks that you're working with?
I work on two kind of tasks that are very similar between them. I work on the political campaigns. I'm one of the three political advisors of the agency. And as well, I work as a strategic planner for the non-political clients. And I need maybe the same competencies about the crisis management in the first place, because sometimes I think that the political campaigns is like crisis management for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, is a forever manage with crisis, deal with crisis. So I started with social media management for politics. This is my first work in Proforma 10 years ago. And during my experience there in that place, I start to move myself from the management to the strategy. Mm-hmm. Now I work like as a spin doctor, if the client needs to this kind of service, but also as strategic coordinator for advertising for commercial clients.
So you started in the social media messaging side of things and then kind of took over to the larger strategy.
Now 10 years ago, social media is my main topic. Now is one of the topics I oversee.
And how important do you think, I think it's interesting that you started from social media and then go into a larger, planning where social media is part of it. Looking at Italian campaigns, we'll get more specific into them. But I mean, how important is social media in the overall strategy of a campaign?
I think that social media strategy is overestimated for a lot of reasons. I tell you the most important. The most important is the role of the television. In Italy is very prominent. A lot of people continues to watch TV and trust TV more than social media information. And this is very important to understand why some kind of party or some kind of message is keep going to convince people. There were a lot of polls about the influence of Berlusconi in the last years. A candidate from center-right that wants to be a national leader made a poll about the most important threat for the people that vote right. And they didn't answer the terrorism, the immigration, the taxes. They answered the communists. This is the effect of 20 years of framing that Berlusconi made with his televisions.
Because he owned the television stations, right?
So this is an example. Now we are making an electoral campaign in my hometown, Bari. We are working with the mayor that is trying to be elected again. And we made a poll about where people gain information about the campaign. And social media is the sixth source of information. There is before television, local newspaper, the word by word. Social media is important, but I think that when the media talk about the electoral campaigns, they overestimated the role of the social media in the overall strategy.
Right. Because I mean, you've got definitely an impressive list of campaigns that you worked for, and I want to kind of dig into those. But I don't think we've talked much Italian politics on the podcast before. So I was wondering if you could set the stage a bit with exactly that media landscape. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think most people have heard of Berlusconi and that he has some television stations, but that's the primary news source, right? It's television.
Yeah.
And I mean, in terms of social media, I was looking up the stats, and it's kind of, it's your normal breakdown. Facebook, YouTube.
Instagram is growing faster.
Instagram is growing faster. But I think what's interesting about Italy is you have also this north-south split, as I understand it.
I think that this split is actually leaning, but there is. Mm-hmm. There are two main differences between making campaigns in the north and the south. The first one is the complexity of the organization of the traditional parties The traditional parties are more closer to the territory in the north than in the south. Mostly in the center regions, in Emilia-Romagna, in Toscana. They were called the red regions because in some towns left parties are ruling since the end of the World War II. Now the situation has changed because of the growth of the Lega Nord. So we need to figure out what happen after European election in the local election that will be in the next 2 weeks, together with European one. But in that region, in the Emilia-Romagna, in Toscana, in Lombardy as well, in Piedmont as well, in Liguria, the left party, but also the Lega in the last 20 years, are very close to the territory. There are a lot of local sections, local presence of the party. In the south, we don't have this habit, the way to do politics. So this is the main difference. So in the south, there are another way to cover the territory. This is very strange, and I admit is linked with some form of unethical way to do electoral campaigns, like corruption. Now I use again Bari as example. Bari has about 300,000 people eligible to vote, and we have 2,000 candidates on the local level. So a lot of people.
For a mayor race.
Yeah, because there are, in Italy we call civic lists. There are the list of people that get together away from the traditional parties. They form a coalition with traditional parties, and this kind of help to traditional parties to cover the territory. So we don't have a classical structure like parties in the north and in the center, and we fill up this void with this kind of strange parties that has been formed for the election. They disappear, they mixed into traditional parties. So we have this main difference. It's easier to manage electoral campaign on the territory, like knock-to-door campaign, or to create grassroots, or to engage volunteers. It's easier in the north than in the south. But this difference is leaning, because even in the north, the traditional parties are losing the link, the connection with the territory. And this, I think, could help these new parties. For example, Five Star Movement on Lega, that have a very media constituencies. They gain vote directly by the media, so they don't need to cover the territory, because I trust the leader, I trust Salvini, I trust Di Maio, and vote for them. So I think that traditional parties they need to recreate a heavy link with the territory to defend themselves against this new way to do politics. I think they could be strange, or could be a trip to the past, but I think that is now the better way to overcome, to defeat the other way to do politics. And the other difference is the use of the preferences, the name of the candidate on the single candidate for the local level. We in the south we use more than in the north, because, as I said to you before, we have more local candidates, so every family has something to vote. The people in north that don't have too much choice, so they prefer to choose the party and don't put the name of the specific candidate to the local level.
Right.
This phenomenon we've seen the last regional and the European election. Again, creates a difference between Five Star Movement and Lega and the other parties. The people that votes the traditional parties uses preferences more than the people that vote Five Star Movement and Lega, for the same reason I've said to you before. People choose that specific leader. They don't care much about the local candidate, their agenda, their program, their platform, but they choose the party and they put a cross at the moment of the vote. And again, if the traditional parties will be more accurate to choose the candidates on the local level, I think that could have a good result, a better result than before. I think that in next European elections, we can see a not slight difference between the vote on the European level and at the local level. May 26, 3,000, 800 small towns and big towns comes to vote together with the European election. I think that we can see different results. I can see that the populist party. I don't like so much this term, but
Me neither.
but this is easy to use. Could have a better result in the European election than in the local election, because in the local elections there are a better offer from the traditional parties, even thanks to these civic lists that helps people to choose a local candidate and go to vote.
So you're saying that in the northern part of Italy, there's more of a party organization structure and a tighter connection with the grassroots.
Yeah.
And they have more control, I guess is the word, on the party list and who people would vote for.
No, are more close to the people, not before the election, but all the time. I think that this difference is leaning now, because the traditional parties are losing the relationship, the territory, they are losing money. So this difference is leaning now. But in the last 30, 40, 50 years, that was the main difference between making politics in the north and making politics in the south.
And then in the south, people could basically fill in candidates on a ballot, or they had so many candidates running, local candidates.
In the south, the politics could be interesting close to the elections. We have a lot of candidates, more candidates on the north. People can choose between a lot of options, but after the election, the situation comes again silent or almost silent.
Yeah, because I'm curious. Like you're running a local election now, but we also have the European elections coming up, and so I'm wondering, in terms of the messaging or the use of digital, how does that change across, let's say a local mayor race and then a national Italian race and then a European level race?
I have an idea that the importance of the social media strategy is the more important, the smaller is the territory you are running for. Because I think that where the media landscape is full of newspapers, TV stations, radio stations, the more it is complex, the more the information could pass via these kind of tools. In the places where, like small towns with 10,000 people or less, where there isn't a TV station of a local media, local newspaper, or local radio, we can see that, for example, the Facebook page of the mayor could have, for example, 3,000 likes. We suppose that 2,000 people could vote in the town. That Facebook page could be the most important media tool in that territory. So I think that we can see maybe that, for example, I think that in the local campaign, the mayoral campaign in Bari, we can use the social media better, more than in the European level. In the European level, there are a lot of differences between how we can send a message, for example, on national level, on the local level in TV, or we can see for me, is absolutely weird and useless way of Italian politics to stay on TV shows 5-6 times a week. That is the strategy now of the national leaders, to fill all the spaces on the traditional media. On the local level, you can do this because we haven't this huge offer of talked politics on TV, on radio. So you need to have a good presence on social media to grow your fan base and to send a message to all the people you can reach.
It's interesting what you say about the national party leaders trying to get slots on talk shows.
For me, it's useless. It's weird. The people get bored of this.
But I'm thinking, because we had a couple digital strategists from the U.S. come on the show, and there it's all about fundraising because they need money to run the campaigns. But then they also have this kind of war over buying different advertisement slots for certain shows or around different events.
It's important to you to know that since 2000 in Italy you can't buy an advertising space on the national TVs because there was a law, par condicio, equal conditions in Latin, that was done by the left government, national government in that age. And this law was made because of the power of Berlusconi to have all the space he wants on
his own channel.
So the left created this role to block the freedom of Berlusconi to use their television for everything he wants. So we don't need advertising on the national level. There is a very huge difference between Italy and the US.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask you, because it seems like the national leaders will have to go on TV and get sort of earned media, right?
Yeah.
So my question was like, what's your approach going into social media, or what's its use or digital more broadly? Because, if it's so much about fundraising in the States, and if you take the fundraising out of the equation, then what's the kind of usefulness of those tools?
We don't use social media to make fundraising because there are two main reasons. The first one is a lack of expertise about this, because in Italy there were the public fundings to the parties until 5 years ago. There was abolished by the previous government ruled by Matteo Renzi. So we don't have the habit to ask money to the people. And the second problem is the level of trust in the parties in Italy are less than 10%. So if you ask money to the people say no.
Right.
They're for this reason. I think the social media has 2, 3 maybe main goals. The first one, nobody admits this in politics, is to use social media to talk with the national media in order to be covered by the national media. Mm-hmm. That is like what Trump is doing with Twitter. Mm-hmm. I don't use social media to talk directly with people, but I use social media in order to media can see me and give me free space on the traditional media. This is the main goal. You can see this, it's easy. Looking for the feedback, the comments on the posts. Very few politicians replies to the comments of the people. So they use the social media to create a vertical, classic broadcast exchange of information. I tell you what I'm thinking. Nobody cares about what you talk to me. Mm-hmm. This is the first goal. And I think that media in Italy doesn't refuse to be themselves the vector of propaganda. They accept this role that politicians gave to them to take the propaganda of the parties and put it on TV, on media. There is a very, very small action of fact-checking about what they say. It's very common to see a quote of the politician without a word about the truthiness that the phrase could have. This is the main goal. The second goal, I think, is to manage crisis in a small amount of time. If I have some trouble with my opponent during an election, or also in a coalition of government with my allies that attack me for some reasons, politicians prefer to use social media because they could answer quicker than if they need to use the media to pass on. Mm-hmm. So it's the most effective way to create a threat, create an attack, yeah, or to slow down this kind of problems. The third goal is to support and build a storytelling strategy. This is very common with politicians that are growing faster with consensus, with trust, that use the social media to talk more about themselves than about the politics they propose. We can see in a very clear way in the way of Matteo Salvini is using social media. He talks a lot about what he eats, where he goes, what kind of vacation he does, and we can see very, very small part of politics, of real politics, of proposals of agenda. So they use social media like some people create joke on the social media about this. It's like an influencer. It's an influencer marketing. They use some kind of wearing specific, and people in the media talk about why that politician could use that kind of T-shirt or something else. It's a very televisive way to use social media. There is not a direct talking with people. There is a kind of shift from TV dramatization to social media. It's like an extension of what we can see in TV on another space where people doesn't expect this kind of interaction. So the frustration increases. We have a 3 of the most 10 most followed pages on Facebook are Italian. You can expect that this means that Italian people are interested in politics or they like the kind of leadership. But if you can see the percentage in the polls of trust in politics, this trust is decreasing again and again and again. So there is like a hiatus between what people expect to see on the social media and what the politicians actually do on the social media.
It's interesting. I just want to give a quick plug to your first point, which was about the media just kind of passing through the politician's message. For the academics listening, we talk about different media systems.
Yeah.
So like in Germany, Scandinavia, you have a strong public service broadcaster. And so that's a certain type of media system. And there's another one called the Mediterranean model, which is exactly that. It's called having a high degree of political parallelism, which is that the parties and the media are sort of close in the sense that the media doesn't play so much of a watchdog or fact checker, but just passes.
Not at all.
So it's cool to hear you say that. It fits with the theory. But I want to ask about this, what you were saying about the influencers or the way that, let's say that Salvini is using social media, because I've looked a bit online and he does do a lot of live videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and you mentioned that social media might sort of maybe kind of following the sensationalism of TV. Do you think that has to do with the live video, the push from the platforms to video? Is that something, because you've been in this political campaigning game for a while, I mean, have you noticed any shift in the use of social media or the political debates through it because of this video push?
Actually, Salvini and Di Maio as well has used the video a lot after they were elected and they were forming together a majority. But in the last weeks, in the last months, they doesn't use the video with the same energy as before. And I think that it could depend on the high rate of the struggle between them. So if they answer each other all the time, all the problems, the small problems of the time, they need to make 5, 6, 7 video every day to answer each other. So after a period in which they use a lot of video to jump the media, to talk directly with people, now they are decreasing. So it seemed that live video could be the next frontier of the social media strategy, but now we can see that when the game gets tough, we can move back to the old way to use media, to go to the interview on the TV, to answer each other, or with a statement for the press agency. So I think it depends on the moment, the specific moment during the life of the government on the electoral campaigns. When you are growing, when you're growing with trust, we are growing with visibility, we are growing with popularity, video could be useful to hang people around your page, around your space. Even because there is, as I said you before, this tendency by the mainstream media to take the video of the politician and pull on the TV without any kind of commentary. This is true, this is false. No, they take the video and put on air without any kind of feedback, any kind of fact checking. They are unconscious helpers to the propaganda.
Yeah, just megaphones.
Yes, megaphones. In this period, if this is Salvini, Di Maio, or the national leader, use the video to beat each other, they could be followed by TV and could, as well as before, and could give the impression that they spend too much time to have problems with the other, not to rule the nation. So I think that it could depend on the specific period. I think that is not a new way at all to make politics. This could be a useful tool to say something in specific moments. At the local level, could be different. The example I know best, of my hometown. For example, the mayor of Bari 2 days ago started refurbishing in a garden, in a park, and he uses the live video to share with the people what kind of new stuff the people could find in the park. So I, like a tourist guide, I explain you what is happening, what will happen. On the local level could be more useful than the national level, because you can help people to imagine what they could see in the future. I think that for this reason, in the local level, we can see a more useful, more ethic way to use videos, because the videos can help people to feel themselves in the storytelling of the politician, and could see that politician doesn't make promise without proof of what they saying, but they can see that this is reality, is not talking, not just talking.
Yeah, because I want to ask you about that, and going back to the European Parliament election in 2014, where you were helping with digital for the Democratic, what is it, the Democratic Party? Or
Yeah,
Democrats?
Partito Democratico or Democratic Party.
Democratic Party, the Italian Democratic Party, where there you're communicating about European issues, and that election went very well. You got what, 40% of the
the most large victory, single party in Italy since 1958.
So I guess my first question is, maybe can you kind of walk us through why that was such a success, and then thinking about the use of, it seems like forever ago, right? 5 years in terms of digital and all the changes. But I mean, on the one hand, you have a local mayor in the park using social media, and you say that's probably effective because people can connect with that. But then on the other end, you have this European Union supranational state. So how do you communicate that and get people connected?
I need to be honest. In 2014, the role of communication and our work is small in the success of that party. And otherwise, it was very important, the role of the reputation of the leader of the party in that period. The leader of the party is Matteo Renzi. Matteo Renzi was nominated prime minister 3 months before the European elections. He was perceived as the new. He had 37 years when the European campaigns was run in 2014, and people just trust him. The European issues cares very, very little to people. That campaign is around national topics as well as this year. In this year is the same. And the role of the communication of the digital strategy was small. In 2014, we had an opportunity that Partito Democratico hasn't seen after that election. The willing from the volunteers on the local level to help this new leader. So people organize themselves, and it was organized by us in a small local group to spread the message, but in a very superficial way. We don't have grassroots campaign at a big level. There is a lot of local activities that we try to control, to oversee, but there isn't like an Ocasio-Cortez style of campaign, for example. There is a very clear message. We have a new leader, young leader, that is different from the other leaders of the past. He was a good mayor in Florence, so you can trust him, and people trust him, period. This is the reason why, after that incredible result, 2 years after, Renzi loses his constitutional referendum that he called, and after 2 years, Renzi loses 40-50% of trust, because there is like a segno in bianco, we call it in Italian, white check. You need just to put the signature because I want to buy you, no matter what.
Blank check.
Yeah, blank check. Yeah, I think that this is what it happened in 2014. I repeat a lot of time, that campaign wasn't the best campaign pro forma ever done on the technical way, even if it was the best result we have recorded, we ever had. Because Renzi doesn't need a great communication strategy. He is the reason why. And this is the reason is a light, is too light, too, it's not heavy, an heavy reason. It's not an ideological consensus. It's not a consensus about the program, the agenda. It's about him. When he decreases to lose trust, the Partito Democratico loses consensus, losing votes, And now we live in a very different situation, and just 5 years has passed between 2014 and 2018. I think that this story could be repeated again with the new leaders. New leaders, as the previous one, as Salvini and Di Maio, as Renzi, gain votes more Salvini and Di Maio actually, because Five Star Movement has a stronger agenda than Northern League. Could have now a very big consensus on themselves, on Salvini and Di Maio. But this consensus could be decreased in a very quick time, and we can see each other in the next 5 years, and we can talk about another different way, another different context.
So do you think it's that Italian politics tends to be highly personalized? I'm thinking of Berlusconi, Renzi, Beppe Grillo.
Yeah, because of the lack of trust in political parties. So people jump from a leader to another leader to another leader. They don't feel themselves linked to left-right party of union, of association, or whatever. They feel free to trust people very different between them in the space of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And so we can see a very quick shift of votes from a party to another one. We voted for the political election one year ago, in the March 2018, and in that election, Five Star Movement took 32% and Northern League took 70%. In the last polls we have seen last Friday before the European elections, we have seen that Northern League has more or less the 30%, so they almost double up the consensus, and the Five Star Movement has 23, 22, 24, 21, so they lose 11 points in 1 year. That is huge for the Italian politics. When we had the Communist Party, the Democrazia Cristiana, the Center Party, you can see a shift of 3%, 4% in 5 years. Now the consensus, the votes are moving very fast because people feel free to move from a leader to another leader to another leader to another leader. Unless a strong party with strong values, with a new and strong ruling class will take place, I think that we'll see Italian politics and with a jump from a situation to another one without any possibility to preview the future.
Well, you had mentioned earlier that social media was maybe a smaller, it was overestimated, I think. But wouldn't that type of the dynamic you're describing where people are just voting on leaders and you're having huge swings in the polls, I mean, don't you think that social media could be capitalized, I'm thinking again through these sort of live videos or trying to get into the press in order to pump up a leader's profile?
Yes, but without the help of the mainstream media to cover what politicians are doing on the social media, this effort that the politician is doing on social media could be less effective. Without this link that is very strong between mainstream media and politicians, Italian media are not the watchdogs. I think that this way to communicate doesn't work in the same way with the same efficiency.
Do you think it would change if fundraising was allowed, where that might allow for an upstart candidate or a popular candidate to build their own advertising strategy in order to go around the media?
I think not, because I think that even the most popular candidates are perceived as part of the elite. So they hasn't a pure force to convince people to donate money to them. I think there could be some interesting possibilities to the local candidates or the underdogs, for example, or small candidates of the small territories could be more effective in the fundraising strategy if they are perceived as people that are not linked with elites, with committees, with entrepreneurs.
Like
they don't
grassroots type
yeah.
of... Yeah.
I think the pure grassroots could be even more effective than the US, but nobody has already tried in a strong way to... There is an experiment that as an association of people as doing in this local campaign. They run a website that is called T-Candido, I Candidate You, and they choose these 8 local candidates in 8 local campaigns, 8 candidates for the local councils, and they took money in the centralized money, and they shared this money with these 8 candidates. These candidates was chosen by people that follow that website. So they say to the owner of the project, fund him, fund her. It is a small experiment. Now it's interesting to see if these candidates were elected on a local level or not. If this happens, I think it could be an interesting sign that the fundraising could be effective, but is necessarily linked with a very big capacity to be incredible, to be far from the normal way to do politics in Italy, because there is a lack of trust. Italy has the less trusted institution in Europe since 10, 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they felt also that was part of the reason for that constitutional referendum, right? So my last question, looks like we're going to get rained on. I don't want to fry all my equipment here. Is kind of following through the work with the Democratic Party and Matteo Renzi. So you had this big success in 2014, and then the constitutional referendum didn't go so well, and then there was Italian elections in 2018.
Yeah,
was it? Yeah, which saw the sort of more right-wing, quote-unquote, populists move in. So I wanted to ask you a bit about what happened there. Was it more the environment and the trust, and because I know you're going to be talking tomorrow about reputation management, digital reputation. And that seems like it all kinds of ties in, right?
Yeah, I think that is a main political trouble that Renzi could manage effectively. When Renzi started a campaign for the constitutional referendum, said, if this referendum doesn't pass, I will leave politics.
Like put himself into the referendum, right?
This creates a big polarization. So all the parties that were against him tried to convince people to vote no, not just for the topics of the referendum, but for kick him away. Mm-hmm. And this creates the results we have seen. Renzi, after he promised, I will leave if the referendum doesn't pass, he resigns as prime minister. He left politics for 2-3 months. But then he candidates himself again from the role of leader of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. He won. We made campaign for him. But in public opinion, he has become a person that doesn't respect his word. Mm. And this is, for the same reasons he has gained that success in 2014, he has lost in 2018. Mm. As well, the people trust him in 2014 and gave him a lot of votes, no matter the agenda he did. For the same reason, he lost that votes and moved themselves to other offers, other political offers. There were another lists of problems. First of all, Partito Democratico ruled with another party, a small party of center-right. So they didn't make all the things that had made if they ruled as alone. Mm-hmm. For example, through civil rights or for work reforms. So they are perceived like they passed too much time in majority, but in a majority that not real majorities went out from the ballot, but after the political compromises with other forces. So Partito Democratico has ruled continuously since 2011 without actually winning any election. Mm-hmm. And after 7 years of this way of stay in the institutions, people said, I want to change. There is a very weird but interesting episode that the former mayor of Turin, Piero Fassino, has told after the second round of the local elections. He ruled the town from 2011 to 2016. He had a very high level of consensus about what he did. He was challenged by Dino, the actual mayor of Turin. Dino is from Five Star Movement. And Fassino told that when he went to vote to the second round, he met an old woman that said to him, "Oh, Mayor, you were fantastic. You are a very nice person." So Fassino asked her, "Thank you very much. So you vote for me?" And she said, "No." And Fassino asked her, "Why not?" And the woman said, "Because sometimes we need to have a change." When in a political campaign you arrive at that level of nonsense in a certain way, you could be sure that there is any strategy of communication you can provide for change the way this flow.
Yeah.
When people want to change, no matter what good the mayor has been during his period of government, when you arrive at that point, we have nothing to do.
Yeah. And then I guess the advantage goes to the challengers then.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Dino, this has been super interesting.
Thank you.
The beautiful view we started with has looked like the rain is about to come down.
But it remains beautiful.
It does. But thank you so much for taking the time out and coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
I've just been speaking with Dino Amenduni, political strategist at Proforma. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Social Media and Politics podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've got pods and pods and pods coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed to get all of them into your feed when they drop. You can follow us on Twitter at SMNP Podcast and sign up for the newsletter on our website, socialmediaandpolitics.org. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, signing off from Copenhagen. See you next time.